What is going on, YouTube universe? This is our Godzilla. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me for another AFL tips, predictions and discussion video where today we look ahead to round 17. We take time to reflect on round 16. But before we get started, if you guys want to get involved in the tipping competition, link is in the description down below. Never too late to get involved. All you got to do is click on the link. Takes you to the website. Free to sign up. You guys should know the drill by now. Before we get started as well, if you have been supporting this series, if you have been getting involved in the competition, thank you all so much. I wouldn't be doing it without you guys. But without further ado, reflecting on round 16, I did okay. I tipped 6 out of 9. We kicked the weekend off at the Gabba with Brisbane taking on the Bulldogs. I tipped Brisbane by 26. They got the job done by more than 26. And I said it was going to be a battle of the forward lines. I said Brisbane's forward line is vastly bigger and better than the Bulldogs forward line, and they delivered. Hipwood, Joe Daniher, if Joe Daniher was kicking more accurately to kick the game off, they would have won by a hell of a lot more, because Daniher's first few kicks were a little bit wayward before he finally straightened up. The midfield battle was interesting because I said going into this round I rated the Bulldogs midfield higher than Brisbane's midfield, and there's a lot of youth running through Bulldogs midfield as well, but where you've got to really draw the line is the second tier midfielders that are stepping up for the Bulldogs. I don't think they're on the same level as Brisbane's, and Brisbane showed that the second tier of players coming through that midfield for them are really finding their feet. I mean, you've got the elite in Jared Lyons, you've got Lachie Neale, you've got those type of players in there, you've got Hugh McCluggage, then you've got Cam Rayner now coming through, you've got Thomas Berry coming through, you've even got Coleman at some instances coming through. Those players are adding a lot more depth to Brisbane than what, say, someone like a McComb from the Bulldogs would be doing in stepping up in the midfield. You take away players like Liberatore, Bontempelli, McRae from the Bulldogs, I struggle to see where their next batch of kids are going to step up to fill that hole. Whereas with Brisbane, I'm now starting to see that if you take out a Lachie Neale or you take out a Jared Lyons, you've got players there that are ready to step up and can fill the gap. Brisbane getting the win, I still feel there's question marks around how they'll do travelling come September, because they've shown this year that travelling hasn't been their strong suit. But come the end of the year, things could change. Marvel Stadium hosted Carlton versus St Kilda. I tipped Carlton, and up until this point, Carlton was undefeated at Marvel Stadium. I did say, however, St Kilda had the speed to match Carlton, and if they wanted to play finals this year, this was a must-win game for them. And they came out and won pretty convincingly, with players like Jack Sinclair absolutely getting off the chain. I feel still the weak link for St Kilda is getting their ball into the forward 50 at a higher efficiency for the likes of Max King and Tim Membry to effectively get the ball in their hands. Long bombing in and hoping that they're going to take a big mark is one thing. Putting your eyes down, fucking putting it down the throat of a player, that is a different question, and that is something that St Kilda need to start doing more of, because if they can give a perfect delivery to Max King or to Tim Membry, or even hit up their smaller forwards in the same fashion, they could be a very dangerous team. At the moment, though, sitting equal 7th out on percentage, they need everything to start going their way. This could be the morale booster they needed. MCG, Essendon took on Sydney. I tipped Sydney, and Essendon came out, and probably this was upset of the round, I feel. Even though it was at the MCG, I thought Sydney should have had this one done, especially with how they belted St Kilda the week prior. Funny story with this game. I only saw the final 2 minutes. I turned it over, and my brother-in-law is a huge Essendon supporter, and I said to him, let's put the footy on and see how much Essendon are getting smacked by. I reckon Sydney's probably up by about 7 goals by now. And at that point in time, Essendon was up by 3. And I said to him, there's still 2 minutes on the clock. I think Sydney's going to get the ball up the other end and Essendon's going to lose by 3 points. And as I said that, Nick Hind goes back, kicks the goal to put him up by 9, and that was signed, sealed, delivered. Good win by Essendon. Essendon, I feel now, are one of those teams where they're not going to make it into the top 8, but a couple of wins here and there could really dictate how the top 8 shapes, and there's a couple of teams kind of in that boat as well. But still a big win for the club. Statistically, still the easiest team to score against. They have had a big fall from grace. They'll still finish in the bottom 4. Let's not forget this is a team that Mick Malthouse tipped for minor premiers and to win the grand final this year. So people had big hopes for Essendon. They haven't delivered. Whether or not they can find some form to finish the year off and then kick off next year stronger, who knows? But still a good win for their club nonetheless. Adelaide, Melbourne at Adelaide Oval. I said Melbourne would go down there and win. This is a game that they should have absolutely destroyed Adelaide, but Adelaide was incredibly competitive, and you know they got the job done in the end by 29 points. This is a game they should have easily won by 50, 60 points. Kicking straighter maybe would have helped that fact. But again, a game where a top side playing a bottom 4, bottom 5 team really needs to put the hammer down to get that percentage, because we see on the ladder this year, percentage is going to play a big factor. Even though Melbourne are now a game clear, Melbourne have a clash with Geelong this week, which will see either Melbourne, continue to have that gap on top of the ladder, or have Geelong win and then that gap gets closed because you'll have Geelong on equal amount of wins. So percentage is going to be huge, and Melbourne, I feel, failed to deliver on that fact. But no Max Gawn, no Luke Jackson. You could probably forgive them for not hammering on more. I feel they would have if they had those players in, but still a good enough win for Melbourne to be one win ahead of the competition on top of the ladder. GMHBA Stadium, Geelong versus North Melbourne. I said Geelong should win this game by 10 goals easy. They did that and then some. Jeremy Cameron, to me, was best on ground. 30 disposals for a bloke that plays deep inside 50, who the last couple of weeks has pushed further up the ground and has become a linking man between the back and the back 50 and the forward 50, as well as being a deadly target within that forward 50 as well, and still managed to kick, I think it was 3 or 4 goals, as well as having those 30 touches. We were having a conversation, my dad and I, this weekend, and my dad feels that Jeremy Cameron might come close to polling in the top 5 for the Brownlow this year. Big call, but Jeremy Cameron, I think when you look at Geelong's wins, he has consistently been good enough in those wins to get at least one vote every game. So it'll be very interesting to see how he polls come end of the year for the Brownlow, but I think he's now taken the lead for the Coleman outright as well. Very good season from Jeremy Cameron. Metricon Stadium, Gold Coast versus Collingwood. We tipped the Gold Coast. They lost by 5 points in a very controversial game in the final couple of minutes. Should it been a free kick for taking out the legs against I don't think it was Ginnivan. It could have been Noble. I don't know who it was, but it was either one of those two against Tuke Miller. Tuke Miller had to basically dive over the player to ensure he didn't get his legs taken out. Every day of the week should have been a free kick. Whether or not it would have made a difference, we don't know. Holding the ball against Jack Crisp, not called, went up the other end. It was called. Contentious decisions. However, Collingwood now 6 in a row. They will probably finish, I feel, in the top 6 unless some outcomes start going against them. I didn't underrate them, and somebody commented on last week's video saying along the lines of that they'd won 5 in a row and I still weren't rating them. It wasn't the fact that I don't rate Collingwood, it's just I gave Gold Coast every chance this week at home, especially with the way they've been playing, to win this game. And if you look at the scoreline, Gold Coast respectively had, a very good claim to that game, especially before Collingwood came back in the last quarter and managed to get away with it. But very good win for Collingwood, 6 in a row. Can they maintain that to finish in the top 8? Let's hope so. MCG, Richmond, West Coast. I said I thought Richmond should win by X amount because we beat them by 106 the first time. I'll take 35 points. And Nick Naitanui coming back into that side, let's not understate how big how big a role he plays for West Coast, because he chopped Richmond up all day. Sad news out of this game is Dustin Martin has done a hamstring. He will not be available this coming week. And Nick Vlosten copped a 1-match ban for striking, which he claimed, and I thought as well, he had hit the shoulder of the player. The view is kind of obscured. I don't know whether they were trying to say he connected him head high, but today Richmond have officially accepted that 1-match sanction. They won't be challenging it, so one of Richmond's best intercept defenders missing against a game against Gold Coast this weekend where their forward line have been up and firing. So it's going to be very interesting. But I'm still happy Richmond got the win. We moved from 9th up to 7th, and with a couple of games coming up against some bottom 5 teams, this is where Richmond can start making a claim for a potential top 4 finish. GWS Hawthorn. Tip GWS, and I said I was a little bit weary about it because every time I've tipped them at Giant Stadium, they've lost. They didn't let me down this time. Hawthorn, however, to their credit, put in a very good contest against GWS. I think Hawthorn's rebuild that they're undergoing is going steadily. Not all rebuilds reap rewards straight away, but the youth that Hawthorn have that are now getting exposure, they're going to be better for it. And Optus Stadium saw a thriller, which I had a feeling would be one of the matches of the round, with Fremantle knocking off Port Adelaide by 8 points. Does that mean Port Adelaide struggle to make the top 8 from here? Currently, they sit 2 wins out, so Port Adelaide, although starting off 0-5, they've been pretty emphatic in trying to get back to where they were at. I don't think they're going to play finals this year, though, which is unfortunate because they ran pretty deep last year. So 6 out of 9 for me. However, 7 out of 9 was the most correct tips for our competition this week, and there was a big amount of you that did so. So congratulations to Shannon, Max, Christian, Caesar, Michael, Nicholas, Craig, Nathan, Daniel, Tyson, Kirk, and Con for all tipping 7 out of 9. And for the first time this year, Courtney K, Freo90, has been dethroned as the number 1 placed tipster. Hi to you too, Craig K is sitting on top at the moment by total margin. Some cripple, Michael T, sitting in 2nd place, equal first. And Kirk G, Brighton 75. Kirk has been sitting 2nd for most of the year. He is in 3rd, equal first at the moment. Courtney's dropped down now to 5th, tied with Ben P for equal 4th. We've got a few on 93. We've got a handful on 91. Myself and Sam on 90. And then we've got a few on 88, 89. It might be coming to the point where I need to start making some very left field tips and hoping for the best. Because 6 behind for myself, it's not looking good for me. But congratulations this week to hi to you two, Craig K, Some Cripple, Michael T, and Brighton 75, Kirk G, for holding down the top of the ladder after 16 rounds of football. Moving on to round 17. Let's get our tips in. We have Thursday night action at GMHBA with Geelong taking on Melbourne. I am going to tip Geelong. The bookies have this game as an equal split. The tipster's choice have gone the way of Melbourne. Rumour is Max Gawn should be fit to actually come back in for this game, and Luke Jackson should probably come back in as well. I'm actually going to go Geelong by 17 points. This is without Tom Stewart, so the likes of Ben Brown, Sam Wiedemann, if he holds his spot, they have the ability to clunk some big grabs down forward without Tom Stewart's intercept marking ability preventing that. But I feel Geelong at the moment, even though they've come up against some teams like Richmond, when Richmond's pace exposed how quickly you can rebound against Geelong, and I feel Melbourne's speed could do that. I feel now that you've got players like Jeremy Cameron, who is just as impactful up the field as he is in the forward 50. You've got Tom Hawkins, who's now finding his feet. Tyson Stengel is now becoming incredibly dangerous. You've got Dangerfield back in the mix for Geelong as well. I think this is where Geelong are going to start making a case for number one spot. And I think after this week, we're going to see Geelong and Melbourne both on top of the ladder, equal first, both, trying to fight out for that minor premiership come the end of the year. Even though Melbourne have still been the pinnacle this year, when I look at how Geelong have been playing, I think Geelong's structure can defeat Melbourne. And Melbourne are probably lucky to have Stephen May back in the mix, because I feel if he was still out, you could almost have Geelong as a lock here. But I feel with most people probably going to go Melbourne, Geelong for me at home is a safe bet, especially when they're playing decent football. And hopefully this gives me a leg up on some of you bastards in the competition. Friday night, SCG, Sydney taking on the Bulldogs. Tim English is due to finally come back into this lineup after 2 weeks out with post-concussion symptoms after the GWS game where Braden Preuss slammed him to the deck. Sydney, however, losing to Essendon. The mould for Sydney this year has been they lose a game they shouldn't, and then the following week they come out and they dominate. Bulldogs haven't really had 2 bad games in a row coming off of the loss that they had to Brisbane. You'd expect Bulldogs to bounce back as well. This is 2 clubs going head-to-head, fighting for a top 8 spot. And if Sydney win this game, this will put Bulldogs 2 wins behind as well. So it's very interesting in the makeup of how the ladder is going to be. And probably at this point in the year, it has been the closest it's been in my memory for a while, where there's still a handful of teams that are vying for a spot, whereas in previous years at this point in time, it was just a question of where the top 8 would kind of situate themselves. Whereas here, we've got from probably 10th up to 7th still fighting for spots, which is incredible this year. As for this game, I'm going to back Sydney. Sydney at home, very hard to beat. Even though they lost to Essendon, I liked what they did more against Essendon compared to what Bulldogs did against Brisbane. I feel Sydney have the answers in the midfield for the Bulldogs, especially with, and it's the case again, of when you take out Sydney's bigger midfielders, you've got the young kids already coming through impacting games, whereas the Bulldogs still have those kids that are kind of a little bit shaky on their feet. Forward line structure, you got to give the edge to Sydney. Defensively, maybe you could argue Sydney as well. So structurally, I'm liking Sydney overall, and I'm going to back him in at home. Saturday kicks off at the MCG. Collingwood taking on North Melbourne. Collingwood are going to make it 7 in a row. I don't see them dropping this game. They should do it by at least 6-7 goals quite comfortably. This will take them, I believe, into a top 5 spot if they win. I don't know what their run home looks like from this point in time, but I don't see Collingwood dropping out the top 8. It's just a matter of where they finish at this point in time. Later on Saturday, Metricon sees Gold Coast hosting Richmond. I am going to back my Tigers in. Even though it's in Metricon, even though Gold Coast are playing good football, and even though in the pit of my stomach I have a bad feeling, I got a feeling that this is a game Richmond could drop, and it's going to potentially derail what Richmond are trying to do. They're going to have to dig deep. No Dustin Martin, no Nick Vlosten, but we've got players like Dion Prestia who should come back in. Trent Cotchin potentially comes back in. I would probably say maybe Ben Miller comes in, or even Ryan Mansell into the back line to fill Nick Vlosten's spot. I don't know whether Noah Bolter is good enough to come back in at this point in time. If Noah Bolter is, he'd be the perfect replacement for Vlosten. So I think Richmond have the answers. It's the case of whether we travel well enough against a red-hot firing Gold Coast outfit. If Richmond win this game, again, this will put Gold Coast 2 wins out and could put a temporary halt on finals chances for them. Gold Coast win this game, they've still got every chance for a finals berth, which would be great to see for them after, so many years of not delivering. But I think Richmond, for me, get the job done. Marvel Stadium, Saturday night. We've got 2 games late Saturday night. The first of which, St Kilda hosts Fremantle at Marvel Stadium. Again, the bookies have this as an even split. See, my head tells me go with Fremantle. But every time Fremantle have come down and travelled this year against a club they should have beaten, they have lost. And St Kilda could have the answers here. And we've seen, I'm pretty sure St Kilda beat Fremantle earlier this year in Fremantle. So I'm going to roll the dice here. Oh, do I, don't I? Do I roll the dice with St Kilda? You know what? I'm going to go Fremantle. I'm going to go Fremantle. I might make a change when team lineups are announced. Hopefully they can get a little bit of redemption coming down here, but I've got a gut feeling St Kilda gets up and wins this. I might change my decision later, but for now, Fremantle. I hope. Adelaide Oval later that night. Port Adelaide taking on GWS. I'm locking in Port Adelaide. This is a must-win game for Port. If they lose this game, I think finals are off the table for them. But they showed, even in a loss against Fremantle, they can play very competitive football. I think Port's best is better than GWS's best this year, at least. GWS could upset, but I don't see them going to Adelaide and derailing Port. Port Adelaide are very hard to play against at Adelaide, especially when they get some momentum rolling. And I feel Port Adelaide's forward line might be a little bit too strong for GWS's defence. Just my personal opinion. I give GWS every chance though, but Port Adelaide and Adelaide still very hard to compete against. Sunday kicks off at the Gabba. Brisbane taking on Essendon. I lock in Brisbane here. Brisbane at the Gabba is almost a safe bet every time. 6 goals. 6 goals Brisbane's way. Not going to dwell on the game that much because I'm that confident. Marvel Stadium later that day. Hawthorn taking on Adelaide. Oh, I was going to click Hawthorn then. But I feel Adelaide could come down to Melbourne and cause a bit of damage. Do we roll the dice? Do we take a chance? Because Adelaide were very competitive against Melbourne. Hawthorn were competitive against GWS, but then when you compare GWS to Melbourne, you know what? I'm looking at Adelaide. I'm going to go Adelaide to beat Hawthorn at Marvel for my upset this week. And actually, I don't think the upset stopped there because Optus Stadium, West Coast taking on Carlton. I'm actually very tempted to tip West Coast. And a lot of you are probably thinking, Godzilla, you've lost the fucking plot. What are you talking about? West Coast Eagles scored almost 100 points against Richmond on the weekend. And even though Richmond had some players out, don't get me wrong, this is a team that lost by 100 points at the start of the year to Richmond on their home turf, came to Melbourne and lost by 35, but almost kicked 100 points themselves. And they're starting to find some form with Nick Nat back in the middle. Dom Sheed, unfortunately, has been ruled out for the rest of the year with a leg injury. But I feel now you've got Willie Rioli, you've got Liam Ryan, you've got Jack Darling. Kennedy didn't play this week, so he was rested. He'll come back in this week. I'm going to go West Coast. Big call, but as I said, I've got to make some big calls this week to try and climb that ladder. But West Coast at home. I'm liking West Coast at home. Big call, but I'm locking it in. So for me this weekend, we've got Geelong, Sydney, Collingwood, Richmond, Fremantle, Port Adelaide, Brisbane, Adelaide, and the West Coast Eagles. Hopefully some of those bold choices can go my way, fingers crossed. The only game I really care about this week is hopefully Richmond get up and win, because going off of what I've got here, Richmond move up to 40 points. If Collingwood win, they'll move up. I've got Carlton losing, so they'll drop down. If Richmond can jump up percentage, Richmond are looking at maybe sitting 6th at the end of this week, according to my predictions. So the climb starts for Richmond, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully they can get it done. Thank you for joining me for another video. Let me know in the comments down below what your tips are. Do leave a like if you have been enjoying this. Subscribe if you're new, and make sure you got notifications enabled to stay up with all future updates I make to the channel. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.